Welcome to a new episode of OR08 Revisited. Today I'm going to tell you a remarkable story. It's the story of a Filipina who married a foreigner for all the wrong reasons. Because this is a true story about existing people, and I don't want to offend anybody, I have changed all their names in order to guarantee their privacy. It's a story about social pressure, illogical decision-making, manipulation, deceit, and intrigues. Lean back for the story of Dinky. Dinky was born in a poor family in one of the many provincial cities in the Philippines. These families often hope that one of their daughters will marry a foreigner and support them in such a way that they can improve their lifestyle. Dinky had only one elder sister, but she had already made it clear that she had no intention of marrying a foreigner and certainly didn't want to move abroad. She was attracted to Filipino men. So was Dinky, but she was willing to make a sacrifice for her family. It must have been somewhere in the mid-1990s that Dinky registered with a dating agency. In those days, there were no dating apps yet, and all correspondence was still by mail. Dinky started exchanging letters with several Americans. She told them about her living conditions, and some of them started sending money. So you see that this kind of practice already happened before there was internet. Dinky never asked them for money, but those of you who are with Filipinas know how subtle they can be in manipulating a man into believing that it was his initiative. There was even one old man, let's call him Bob, who was so convinced that he was going to bring Dinky to the United States and marry her, that he already bought a car for her and sent her pictures of this very nice convertible. Dinky was only around 20 at the time and had no intention of marrying a 60-plus foreigner. I have no idea if Bob sold the car again or started driving it himself. Maybe he even found another Filipina to drive it. Meanwhile, Dinky was becoming serious with a Texan. We'll call him Joe. After all, that's how they call all of us in the Philippines, right? And this time, she did go to the United States with the intention of marrying him. Joe had recently built a house on the land of his parents, Joseph Sr. and Rebecca. They had a big plot of land and their houses were far apart from each other. They lived in a rural area of Texas where everyone had these huge plots of land and they needed a car to drive to their next door neighbor. Joe and his father were both working in the oil industry and gone all day. This left 21-year-old Dinky alone in a strange house, in a strange country, with nothing to do. Rebecca tried to help her adjust to this situation by taking Dinky to the nearest city in her pickup truck once in a while. Then they would go shopping together and have lunch somewhere. Dinky developed a lasting relationship with Rebecca, who would, however, never become her mother-in-law. Dinky was a city girl. In the Philippines, she would step outside her door and immediately have a lot of neighbors and friends to talk with or do things together. In Texas, she found herself in the middle of nowhere, with no one around, and Rebecca as her only tower of strength. Also, I guess she never really developed true feelings of love for Joe. So after a while she told him that she couldn't go through with the wedding and asked him to bring her back to the airport, which he did reluctantly. Back with her family in the Philippines, who were disappointed that she didn't marry Joe, you would expect her to put all this down to experience and decide that marrying a foreigner was not for her. If she had found herself a nice Filipino, she would never have struck it rich, but at least she would have lived a happy life close to her family in the country she was familiar with and where she still wanted to be most of all. But she didn't. She picked herself up, dusted herself off, and started writing with foreigners all over again. She felt that she had let her parents down and wanted to make up for that by marrying a foreigner, even though it was not what she really wanted. I can assure you that if Dinky's family had belonged to a higher social class, she would never have left the Philippines. She would have married a Filipino and started a family with him. But she felt an obligation towards her family and took a drastic decision. Put something underneath your chin so your mouth doesn't fall open when I tell you what that decision was. Dinky decided that she was going to marry the first foreigner who proposed to her. Yes, you heard that correctly. She decided to tie the knot with the next man who wanted her. At this point, she had no idea who that man was going to be. Was he going to be tall or short, fat or skinny, handsome or ugly? And what's more important, was he going to be a nice man or a jerk? Was he going to be a supportive partner or physically abuse her? Was he going to treat her like a princess or like Cinderella? How could she decide to marry a man who wasn't even part of her life yet? This decision was so irrational that it is absurd. It only shows how desperate poor Filipinas can be. Did she really stick to this awkward decision? I will tell you after the break. Hey, you are still watching. Does that mean you like this video? Because if you do, why not give me a thumbs up? Or even better, subscribe if you haven't done so already. You know it is free. And if you'd like to share your thoughts or experiences, that's what the comment section is for. But please keep it constructive. And now, without further ado, I will let you continue watching. Dinky continued exchanging letters with foreigners, and one of them was Bruno. Her first non-American pen pal, Bruno, was a European. He was very open to her about writing with different Filipinas and not planning to hasten his decision. In every letter she wrote to him, Dinky asked if he had already made up his mind and if he was going to choose her. Dinky was not Bruno's first choice. He was writing with another Filipina with whom he seemed to have more in common. Tessa, as we will call her, was very pretty in the pictures she sent to him. But those pictures turned out to be of another woman. When Bruno suggested that he would come and visit her, he suddenly received pictures of a less than attractive, fat woman who now confessed to having a child that she never mentioned before. Bruno recognized a con job when he saw one and moved on to his second choice, Dinky. Bruno visited Dinky in the Philippines and proposed to her. Less than a year later, they were married and living in Bruno's home country. Dinky kept her word and married the first man who proposed to her. Things worked out fairly well until she started making Filipina friends. Bruno lived in a major European port city. Many of the ships arriving there had Filipino seamen on board. Dinky made friends with a group of Filipinas who had a lucrative hobby. They went on board of these ships to cater to the physical needs of these Filipinos. Behind the back of their husbands, of course. One day one of these Filipinas said to Dinky, "Why don't you come to the ship with us? There are some handsome guys there, and they pay well if you go with them to their cabin." One thing led to another, and over the years many seafarers passed the review. All that time Bruno had no idea that his wife was cheating him. How is that possible, you may wonder? Well, those Filipinas had each other's back. They were very good at providing alibis for one another. I'll just give you one example. There was one Pinoy seaman that Dinky carried on with for quite some time. We'll call him Piolo. Dinky was really falling in love with Piolo, who was married with children and only used Dinky for his pleasures while he was away from his wife. But he showered Dinky with expensive gifts, and she was totally smitten. One day, Piolo's ship was arriving in the harbour, but would already leave again the next morning. So the only chance Dinky had of being with Piolo was if she could spend the night with him on the ship. But how was she going to pull that off? She had never spent a night away from Bruno. So how could she do that without arousing his suspicion? She called one of her best friends, Charmaine. "Char, I really need a big favor from you." She explained the situation and said, "The only way I can get away from Bruno for a whole night is if he thinks that I'm staying over at your place. I'm going to tell him that you are sick and you asked me if I would come and spend the night with you. Because you're there alone and you're always vomiting." Charmaine was not really enthusiastic about getting involved in Dinky's deception, but felt that she owed her for helping her integrate into the local Filipino society when she just arrived in Europe. When Dinky fed her lies to Bruno, he immediately said, "Okay, Charmaine needs you, so you must go and spend the night with her." Bruno knew Charmaine. He liked and trusted her. He said, "Pack your things for tonight, I will drive you." While Bruno was driving, Dinky sent a message to Charmaine. "Char, we're on our way. Put on your pyjamas and play sick." Bruno dropped off his wife, said hello to Charmaine from a distance and then drove off. No sooner had Bruno's car disappeared around the corner, or Dinky called a taxi to take her to the port. As the deceit went on for years and Bruno still didn't suspect anything, Dinky became overly confident and started slipping up, until one day she unknowingly gave herself away. That was the beginning of the end. Bruno divorced Dinky and sent her packing. Dinky was devastated, as she always thought that she was so good at the game that Bruno would never find out. Now she had to take care of herself, pay the rent, all the bills that go with it, her food, etc. So there was not much money left to send to her family in the Philippines. Again, this would have been an opportunity to move back to her country and live the life she left behind, with her family, friends and boyfriend. Oh yes, beside her harbour activities in Europe, she also had a boyfriend in the barangay next to hers. At some point she was even sending money to him. But Luke, as we'll call him, realized that he had no future with Dinky because she was married. Of course he couldn't anticipate that Bruno would divorce her, so he married another woman. But that didn't stop either of them from playing boom-biddy-boom every time Dinky visited her family. Dinky couldn't go back to the Philippines. What would she do there? Work for less than 10,000 pesos per month and feed on unpeeled rice and canned sardines? Oh no, she had become far too sophisticated for that. She would lose face if she had to go back to her old lifestyle. No, there was only one thing she could do, and that is marry another foreigner. Wait a minute. We have already established repeatedly that Dinky has a distinct preference for Filipino men. Hasn't she learned anything from her experiences with Joe and Bruno? Apparently not, because a few years later she married Björn, another European. Will Dinky ever stay faithful to one man only? That is now for Björn to find out. Bruno started a relationship with another Filipina, and Joe, he has no idea how lucky he was the day Dinky turned him down. So far, the story of Dinky. I hope you enjoyed it. Please leave a note in the comment section to let me know if you learned anything from this story. Feel free to voice your opinion about Dinky and tell me what you think about guys like Bob, Joe, Bruno or Björn. You can write anything, whether positive or negative, as long as you stay polite and respect all the characters' privacy, the way I did when making this video. If you like watching Ormoc Revisited, you may also fancy my other series, 7 Amazing Tales of the Philippines and the Expat Files. Or maybe you are more interested in my videos about Europe. You can find all of these on Homebase Belgium. Be happy, stay healthy and enjoy life.